All right, welcome back to the LeaderLink podcast. This is your host, Charles Heasley. And last week we talked about the concept of expectations. And this episode is going to be not necessarily a continuation of that, but one thing that a lot of leaders struggle with, and a lot of employees really struggle with this too, is the idea of accountability. Nobody really wants to be held accountable because what do you think? Let me ask you, what do you think when somebody says the word accountability? More often than not, what I hear is something along the lines of who is to blame. And that is unfortunately a pervasive issue in modern organizations, is that whenever we start talking about holding people accountable, it is who's to blame. And the first thing that I would encourage you to do is, if you'd like to try me out for just a second, I want to shift the mindset a little bit into what is the goal of accountability. Because if we have a blame mindset, then that is going to be very past focused. You know, what happened, what went wrong, who's to blame. Whereas accountability is future focused. In other words, okay, this happened. Now let's learn from it and fix it so we have better outcomes. And sometimes accountability will require discipline. Sometimes it will require training. Sometimes it will require things that can make us uncomfortable. But it is not all about punishment, and it is not all about negative. Accountability is actually a good thing. We actually need accountability, every one of us, as adults, because accountability helps us become better. We're never going to be perfect. We're never going to be at the top of our potential. And actually, when I work with leaders, I use this in conjunction with accountability all the time, because when we think of accountability, it has been drilled so deeply into us that it is a negative. But as a leader, you're also a coach. And so for every person on your team, and actually this goes for yourself, there is a place where you are right now. And this place is where you are in terms of your skills, your competencies, your beliefs, your behaviors. And then above that, there is a place that you could get to. And that is a potential future version of you. And so this space in the middle is called potential. And as a leader, you are constantly trying to help increase your potential, but also increase the potential of the people on your team. That is actually what accountability is. It is a positive thing. Again, sometimes it does require correction, but by and large, it's a positive thing. I remember I was working with a group of leaders, and we start talking about accountability pretty early, because it's a pretty important concept. And when I remember this one lady in particular almost had this visceral disgust when I use the phrase accountability, because to this person, they had experienced accountability in the form of who's to blame. But she's not alone. In fact, a lot of people in our modern organizations, that's what they experience, because most leaders aren't fully, they may intuitively know this, but they don't fully embrace their role as a coach. And that coach's role is to hold people accountable. And the way you hold people accountable is help them get better. It is forward thinking. Some leaders still use accountability as who's to blame, which is unfortunate. This is unfortunately tied to oftentimes ego. We use the word should a lot, like they should have known better. It's a way to kind of insulate and protect the leader from doing what they need to do. And so the mindset shift is critical. We have to shift the mindset to, it's not a bad thing. It's not who's to blame. It is actually a good thing. And it is, how do we get better outcomes? How do we help people become better versions of themselves? And so once we have the mindset shift, the second thing to think about is if somebody does not, if somebody needs to be held accountable because there's some sort of problem that happened, before you rush into punishment, before you rush into correction, I would encourage you to take a step back and really think about, have I given them the clear expectations? And if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go take a look, go take a listen, because we dive into expectations and why they're so critical. So the first thing I would think, once we get to past the mindset, have we given them clear expectations? Do they have the authority to do what they need to do? Do they have the training that they need? Do they have the right resources? Because if we as leaders have not provided them with those things, then we are the ones who need to be held accountable. And the first thing we need to do is correct that. One of my mentors in law enforcement, Larry Hester, may he rest in peace, he would actually, I met him at a training, and he and I became close friends, mentors. Well, probably more mentors than close friends. I called him a mentor. If you asked him what I was, he would say a friend. Anyway, a little bit of a scroll moment. I would talk to him about these issues that I was having, and that could be an issue with people on my team. It could be issue maybe with another peer, another sergeant. Sometimes it might be an issue with my leadership. And as a leader, you're going to encounter problems, and this is where accountability comes in pretty frequently. And so he would listen. He would let me say my piece. He would ask some clarifying questions like a good mentor would. And then before he helped me dive into the problem, he would ask me this question. And at the time I dreaded it, but it really was a valuable question that ultimately has shaped a lot of my views on leadership and a lot of the ways I coach other leaders. And that question is, how are you contributing to this problem? Again, it's not necessarily, I'm dealing with an issue, but it's my fault. Well, yeah, sometimes it is. And this was a mindset shift that I had to realize. Am I communicating clear expectations? Do the people that I'm frustrated with, do they have the authority, the training, the resources, the support to actually do what I need them to do? If they don't, then I have to start with holding myself accountable first. And personal accountability for some leaders it's tough because the ego is involved, and we want to, there's this natural tendency, we want to protect ourselves. And if we have to admit that we're not perfect, for some people that's very tough. But I believe in this concept so much that with my branded challenge coin on one side, it has the logo, but it's also a mirror. And the idea is you look at yourself first. Look at the mirror first. Are you part of the problem? Most accountability issues that I come across, we find out in our coaching that the leader is at some point part of the problem. I was actually yesterday was coaching somebody one-on-one, and he was talking about frustration with expectations, and he kept using the word, and you're going to hear this over and over again in this podcast, is the word should. If people should be doing something, that means that we haven't clearly communicated the expectation. And if they should be doing something and we haven't communicated that expectation, then the first thing we have to do is hold ourselves accountable and now communicate that expectation. It happens all the time. Anytime you think or hear the word should, they should know, take a look at yourself first and see if these things have clearly been communicated. Accountability takes courage. So, some leaders do struggle with ego. And I think ego is important. We do need ego. We need the confidence, because leadership is tough. It's a contact sport. There's going to be people who disagree with you. There's going to be constant challenges with a lot of people challenges mostly. Um, it's tough, and so you do need an ego, but you have to temper it with humility. And I think accountability is a great place to start. It takes a lot of humility to recognize that I might need to hold myself accountable before I hold other people accountable. And it's tough. You got to admit that you make some mistakes. You're not going to be perfect, so it is important to admit those mistakes. Uh, you have to own your own outcomes. It's again, you gotta have a little bit of ego, but you have to have the humility as well to say, I take ownership of that. Um, you probably would not want to work for somebody who did not take ownership of their own outcomes, and the same is true if you don't take ownership. Your people will not want to work for you. It takes courage, because accountability will require, to a certain extent, receiving some sort of feedback, whether that's self-reflection feedback, looking into the mirror, or feedback from people on your team, feedback from your leaders. It takes courage. It takes courage to learn and improve. But again, that's what accountability is about. We're closing that gap from where we are to where we can be. All right, so what do we do with this? How do we approach accountability? It's going to be a journey. It's a journey that I will continue to live, and a journey that I will continue to work with other leaders on. Again, the first step is to take a look at yourself. And here's the thing: you're not going to get it right every time. You're not going to be perfect. But my challenge to you is to give it a shot. And the next time that even this week, I'm sure that there's going to be some opportunity you have where somebody either does not live up to your expectations, or somebody frustrates you in some way. What I'd like to challenge you to do is slow down and take a step back and ask yourself, have I given clear expectations? Have I given them the training, the tools, the authority? Has it been clearly communicated? And if not, then start there. All right, that's my challenge for you. And if you have the courage to share, leave a comment. Leave a comment and let us know. What do you think about accountability, or where have you seen accountability put into practice in a positive way? Because we eventually, as a society, as leaders, have to change the narrative around accountability, because it is a good thing. All right, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.